What major scientific breakthrough is actually closer to happening than most people think? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Haridiawanan is first award. Parkinson's. They just published results of taking stem cells, turning them into neurons, and injecting them. They did a small amount just to see if the neurons survived. But not only did they survive, but some patients stopped getting worse, and some had reduced tremors. The results are promising enough that it's believed it could end up being a cure. I would love to get Michael J. Fox back. Story 2. My parents are close friends with a couple of doctors, MED, and my GF has diabetes type 1. The doctors keep claiming that there is a breakthrough in treatment of type 1 around the corner, just like 5 more years or something. On the other hand, in the type 1 subreddit, the "in 5 years there will be a cure" is a running joke because people have been telling that for about 40 years now. So I'm not very optimistic, TBH. Story 3. As someone working in renewable energy, I can tell you that solid-state batteries are right around the corner. We're talking phones that charge in minutes and last for days, electric cars with double the range. Story 4. Astronomer here. Here's a wild one. We might have a new planet in our solar system, like a legit planet over 4x the mass of Earth, by the end of the year. Have you ever heard of Planet 9, the hypothetical planet out beyond Pluto? Finding it is really hard due to it being so well beyond all the other planets and being very faint. But last week I was at a talk by Mike Brown, the astronomer who proposed it, and also who killed Pluto. In October, though, the Rubin Observatory is supposed to start operations, which is going to take images of the entire sky every night with an 8-meter telescope. According to Mike, if that turn-on actually happens in October, we should find Planet 9 by mid-December. Most likely thing is that start date slips a little, but how cool is that? Story 5. mRNA tech may give us cures to over a dozen illnesses, including several cancers, HIV, type 1 diabetes, and chronic gastric diseases, Crohn's especially. Edit. I have been informed educated that mRNA is not likely to be used to cure HIV. Oops. But here's to hope that they cure it soon. Story 6. Biotech-based aging reversal. Scientists are already reprogramming cells to act younger, and early tests in animals show real promise. It's not full-on immortality, but slowing or even reversing aging at the cellular level is way closer than most people realize. Maybe decades, not centuries. Story 7. Detection of primitive alien life. Just recently, a potential signal of biomarkers have been detected on an exoplanet. This is still very preliminary, but maybe the first signal of alien life. Even if this signal turns out to be false, chances are high that we detect something on another exoplanet with the current or upcoming generation of telescopes. Story inter one and honor sonjenter and fursurmon. I work in the AI space. It is moving so quickly and being deployed throughout all industries at a rate that is unstoppable. We may not feel it quite yet, but we will very soon. In 5 years, I can't even imagine what things are going to look like. Story term. How long do I have to wait for the biggest, most useful breakthrough of all? Not having to wait at a red light when I'm the only car at the intersection because the light will automatically turn green? Story 10. Nuclear fusion. Not so much closer than people think, but a major breakthrough that will literally change almost every aspect of human civilization once it really gets going, and it's a matter of when, not if. Story 11. If we ever again get better space telescopes, we may improve methods for finding other life in the visible universe. Not to denigrate the recent announcement, I'm thinking of a discovery with more certainty. Edit to add, the rest of the world is not necessarily hampered by US admin putting the brakes on NASA projects. Europe, India, and China are perfectly capable of advancing astronomical science. Story 12. CRISPR, clustered regularly interspace short palindromic repeats, is a gene editing tool that allows scientists to modify DNA sequences in living organisms. It's based on a naturally occurring bacterial immune system where bacteria use CRISPR sequences to remember and destroy viral DNA. The CRISPR system uses a guide, RNA, gRNA, and a Cas9 enzyme, or other Cas proteins, to target and cut DNA at specific locations, enabling scientists to delete, insert, or modify genes. Story 13. They have developed tattoo ink that can determine how high or low your blood sugar is by the color it turns. There's also two other types of tattoo inks for monitoring disease in the body, but I was most excited about the blood sugar one. Though it can't tell you your exact glucose count, it will still be enormously helpful for diabetics everywhere who have a lifelong struggle with this illness. It is currently in the testing phase. For many who do not have severe symptoms associated with high or low blood sugar, it could replace glucose monitoring devices for life. Story 14. All the big tech companies are pretty interested in messing around with our brains, like Neuralink, etc. I think procedures where we can get chips to make us half robots, half humans will happen scarily soon. Story 15. For those who can afford it, the future of medicine will look like magic to us in the way that the computer would look like magic to people from the 1700s. We may have to deal with our grandkids going to a shady shop in the mall and getting an off-brand genetic modification for a tail. Just like our grandparents hated tattoos, we'll hate horns. Story 16. Artificial intelligence that can design its own successor, which is even more capable and can design an even more intelligent successor. It has the potential to be the last thing humans ever need to invent, and it's probably 4 years away. Story 17. I don't have any faith that anything that isn't infectious will ever be cured ever again. The fact that this school of thought became associated with being anti-science and anti-vaccine and is spearheaded by individuals who think like that sucks. People's inability to admit they really do this is a major setback. As of right now, we have the science for a broken bone to be a 3-week affair. Instead, we still have people losing jobs because they broke their bone after 35 and everything is done at a snail's pace. If you get a bone bruise or tear something as an elite football player, the resources you get is similar as if you're about to die. Other people lose their jobs because the MRI was looked at very quickly and the radiologist and ordering doc refused to look at context clues like where the bone bruise is and recommend more imaging with contrast. One type of hepatitis was cured more than 15 years ago, and people still die from it today. They can't access the cure. If it works this way, do you actually think they're motivated to cure anything? Literally nothing that actually ends a health issue and doesn't result in indefinite, forever treatment is going to come out in the next century. People would have to admit this is a real phenomenon. And after the debacle with Republicans demonizing the vaccine, people will never entertain how hard we're being screwed in this context ever again. This thread pisses me off. There hasn't been a sincere breakthrough that applies to everyone in a century. They can replace people's arms and legs with robotics now, and I still see homeless people in wheelchairs that became addicts after losing a leg. The simping makes me so angry. None of this will apply to you. Story 18, CAR T-cell therapy, which is a cure for cancer that shows near-perfect results. Basically, they sample your personal, unique cancerous tissue and with gene splicing can program the cancer to consume itself, the same way your body usually destroys flawed cell reproduction on a daily basis. Just amazing. Cannot go mainstream soon enough. Story 19. I'm begging for it to be celiac disease. All I want is a Cinnabon, a beefy 5-layer burrito, and a cheese quesadilla with extra cheesy jalapeno sauce. I've told my husband that if I'm gonna die anyway, they better make sure the last thing I get to taste is a Cinnabon. IDC if I'm on life support, in a coma, etc. They had better be stuffing that into my mouth. I want to taste it before I go. That being said, if I ever become terminally ill, I'm telling the doctors to me up and I'm eating every gluten-filled food I've missed. If I'm going out, I might as well eat good. Story 20. Almost all very premature infants develop some form of lung complication. They either grow out of it as they age or, like my daughter, it kills them before they reach a year. Treatments now aren't well tested or even show much effectiveness. The really hope that soon this changes. When I was pregnant and told the origin of my daughter's growth restrictions was likely a placenta that just didn't function well, the doctor said, "We don't have a pill to give you to make it work." So something like that would also be nice. Story 21. Would love a fix for multiple sclerosis. I haven't been able to function yesterday and today, exhausted, pains, tummy trouble, and just need a break. Every day it's a different symptom, and God forbid I have a good day. I pay for it for days after. Story 22. A lot of these comments are all about medical stuff, and it's truly amazing to see how close we are to solving so many illnesses. The only problem is how if this will be affordable to the public or just used for the rich as most things are. Story 23, the singularity, i.e., the point in time at which AI can also understand the problems it needs to solve and put into place solutions for them, potentially removing humans from the equation. I don't mean that this will happen in 10 years, just that it will happen sooner than people would think and our lifetimes. Story 24. Confirmation of alien life, almost certainly microbes detected by the chemicals they pump into a planet's atmosphere, not contact with any form of intelligent life, but it'll still be an absolutely huge moment for our understanding of the universe. There's at least one planet scientists have been looking at where the marker went from 70% likely to 99% likely, but 100% likely they think is only a few years away. Nuclear fusion has been so close for 30-odd years now, so it's become a meme. But the last few breakthroughs, generating more energy than put into it, and the rising of the sustaining of the reaction into the minute range have been much bigger than anything we've seen before. Story 25. The one that's already here that's blowing my mind is engineering proteins using AI. Most current AI stuff people hear about isn't actually very useful, but AlphaFold is incredible. For context, predicting how a protein should fold is incredibly hard. There's even a challenge that occurs every 2 years where participants compete to see who can get the most accurate prediction. Before AlphaFold, the best average score teams were managing was around 40 out of 100 points in the competition, and that took monumental effort. A typical protein is estimated to have 10 out of 300 possible configurations, so even if you understand the physics behind protein folding, you still have to brute force those combinations, which just isn't possible with any computational power available today or perhaps ever. So while a lot of teams were using physics-based predictions, they couldn't brute force all possibilities, reducing their accuracy. Enter AlphaFold, an AI model trained on confirmed protein configurations. Version 1 entered the competition in 2018 and pulled off almost 6,000, jumping way ahead of other teams. Then came back in 2020 and almost hit 90. Ever since then, basically all of the top teams are using AlphaFold as part of their processes, with winners breaking into the 90s. In just a few years, the competition went from not seeing even 50s to being in the 90s, and the competition has been held every 2 years since 1994. It completely changed the field and is an excellent case of AI actually being used in incredible ways that actually matter. And now there's even tools being developed which use AlphaFold as a base in order to generate new proteins for specific purposes. It's still not perfect, so there's lots of work to do, but the possibilities are incredible. From curing diseases to creating enzymes that can withstand harsher conditions for manufacturing purposes, to testing how medicines bind to different proteins, to possibilities we haven't even thought of yet. Story 26. Until you suffer with hearing loss, as I have, you probably don't know or care, but curing deafness is closer than people know. Using genetic manipulation, 7 to 8 biotech firms, most are American companies, have successfully cured deafness. I actually spoke to a university that is a participant in these trials, and they're close. Recently, a doctor using these methods gave a deaf little boy full hearing ability. No. Researchers learned that birds and rabbits never go deaf, and using the information took it from there. Story 27. I'm on a medication that isn't even properly out yet, so I can't say what it is, but I trialed it for a year, and it basically cured an autoimmune problem I had. So as compensation for being a lab rat, I get it from the PharmaCorp for life. All I can say is it's life-changing, going from an overactive immune system to a regular one. Story 28. Closer than you think. I'm working in a greenhouse that grows the most nutrient-dense and enzyme-rich fruits, herbs, and vegetables on the planet, backed by multiple SAP tests comparing multiple sources. Our technology will bring the food deserts in any and every country to a screeching halt. The technology is none like anyone in our time has seen. Zero waste system. We have too many client testimonials to even start to fully understand the true gravity behind the technology and our goals. Nutrition is number one. Everything you do and everything you suffer from can all be helped and supported through correct nutrition. Story 29. Designer babies, designer germs or viruses. CRISPR and gain-of-function research during COVID was not even covered up well. That's and then using mosquitoes as a delivery system. Yet we don't hear much about it in MSM, but we do get an earful on the vaccine deniers. Like the goalposts were shifted from the possibilities of these technologies into why are people denying them entirely. Story 30. Batteries that never need recharging. They have already made a nuclear 3V 100 microwatt battery that doesn't need replacing or charging for 50 years. It won't be too long before they make more energy-dense batteries in a smaller package. The pitfall for consumers will be safety, however. They need to find a way to make them safe. However, the current generation could power pacemakers or sensors for space, etc. Story 31. mRNA vaccines against herpes and Lyme disease are also under rapid development. They have shown positive results in clinical trials, and there is a possibility that these vaccines might be available to the public sooner than expected. This would be a tremendous public health breakthrough, especially for areas where these diseases are prevalent. Story 32. There are several changes occurring faster than people understand. Oil is irrelevant. Oil is falling as a source of primary energy. Yes, natural gas has taken a large portion, but solar and wind are growing so fast that there will be a huge oversupply within a few years. 2. GLP-1 receptor agonists. Ozempic is showing promising results for a wide variety of problems, including weight control, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and cardiovascular, just name a few. Story 33. The simulation hypothesis. Are we all just living in a computer program? What if you're not real? Well, you're real in a sense. But what if everything around you, including this conversation, was just a simulation and you're just a part of some advanced AI experiment run by some hyper-advanced civilization? Nick Bostrom's simulation argument posits that it's possible that future humans or extraterrestrials are running simulations of their ancestors, and we are the simulated beings in that experiment. If that's true, you could technically be a programmed consciousness. The evidence. There's some crazy science showing that quantum mechanics suggests the universe behaves like a computer simulation, with tiny bits of data controlling everything at a subatomic level. Crazy part? It's also possible that our reality could be a simulation within a simulation, and somewhere an even higher level, superior civilization is controlling our reality. The scariest and mind-blowing part, there might be no way to prove whether we're in a simulation or not. We could be the Matrix and not even know it. Story 34. Cancer testing through blood. My wife is going through treatment, and we naively assumed at the beginning that you jump in a machine, get a scan, and boom, you have this, and this. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that currently, but it's coming up in 10, 20 years, hopefully. Get your annual physical and also a blood test, which comes back and tells you what's up. Can't wait, and hopefully prevents more folks from needing to go through treatment. Story 35. Pharmacogenomics cell and gene therapy. Supporting to wrap around the GLP-1s, pharmaceuticals are giving normal or near normal lives to people that had little hope 5 years ago, and the list is growing every year by the hundreds. Story 36. Fusion. I know it is a trope, but for decades, very little money has gone into fusion research, and that has changed over the past few years. The development of novel high-temperature superconductors was a game changer, and AI is enabling better control of plasmas. Once real break-even is achieved, not press release break-even, it will be the equivalent of Kitty Hawk and things will happen very quickly. Story 37. Sentient AI existing within a quantum realm. Once they realize that the current quantum computers they messing about with ATM have methodically divided their transferable storage ability into a separate unexistence, extra dimension, and AI gets in there, more than possible. We will have unintentionally given birth to the minds from E.N.M. Banks' culture novels. Story 38. Speaking as someone who's got it, tinnitus. Stem cell research has greatly progressed in the human ear. Those little microscopic hairs on the inner ear might not stay irreversibly damaged for long. This would also greatly help those with hearing loss for the same reason. Damage to those tiny hairs that detect sound frequencies. Story 39. DNA printers, designer babies, human cloning, optic nerve, whole spine, neural interfaces, artificial organelles, cultured cells producing beans with electricity, and composted grass trimmings, artificial wombs, body transplants, brain augmentations, hive minds. Story 40. Not controllable fusion power. That's 20 years away. The fun part about that above statement is you can always use it. They were saying it in the 80s and they are saying it now. You can remember it and use it with your grandchildren in 40 years. Story 41. That a scientist, and they could be from any country, but one I can think of off the top of my head is Russia, will keep finding viruses, infections, or even mutations from thousands of years in the past that are still active and will do something to cause a plague by just working with it. COVID is not that. Will eventually be released, either by accident or on purpose, and we will head into a world like movies such as 12 Monkeys, but we won't have the technology to travel back in time and we'll all eventually die off because of it. Story 42. Every major scientific breakthrough has been just around the corner for the last decade or two. That is, if only scientists didn't have to bullshit their way through funding applications and publication pressure, and if companies didn't keep cutting corners for immediate profit. Story 43, probably the cure for any and all major health issues. Meaning we probably already had the scientific breakthroughs, but the loss of money due to eliminating the pharmaceutical demand was too much for big pharma to allow them out. But, that would never happen, right? Story 44. Honestly, I feel like Elon's development of rockets that can be reused without having to be rebuilt will be a major milestone towards humans living on Mars. From what I've heard him say on podcasts, is that he will have it done in the next year. Story 45, asteroids mining. They could probably do it now, but it just wouldn't be profitable to haul stuff back down to Earth. Asteroids mining is almost inherently the second major space industry, which would be used to feed materials to something else. IMO, that something else may be AI. They can build massive solar arrays in space and have them power AI computers up there. Solar is obviously far more efficient in space, since there's no atmosphere or pesky nighttime. If it's chewing away at massive problems, a few seconds of signal lag hardly matters. Story 46, cancer. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I recall my PhD candidate friends years ago finding promising breakthroughs in this area. CAR, using a patient's own T cells with genetic engineering to produce antigens specific to the cancer they're facing. Essentially bioengineered and targeted immunotherapy. Pretty cool stuff, of course not perfect for everyone, but it has been successful in those with advanced conditions, putting them in remission and/or completely eliminating their cancers. Story 47, nuclear fusion energy, once thought to be decades away, is now much closer, with recent breakthroughs achieving net energy gain in experiments, paving the way for potentially limitless clean power within the next couple of decades. Story 48. When you do genetic testing and you get the results saying you carry these mutations, almost 90% of those mutations are of unknown significance. Do they put you at risk or not? Now we are able to perform and test every possible mutations, especially in cancer-susceptible genes, if they put you in risk of developing cancer. Story 49. Eliminating obesity and all the crap that goes along with that. Inflammation, high BP, diabetes, cholesterol issues, etc. Right now, you can take a weekly shot of tirzepatide from the same kind of injector pen used for diabetes. You can drop 20% of your body weight in a year. Cost is still high in the USA, but already about 1 or 3 of what it was last year, somewhere around $500 a month and falling. A weekly oral pill is coming to market in about 2 years, and there are at least 10 other options in the pipe that are possibly even better. They are going to drop in the next couple years. Story 50. Whether or not the ability to do so will be made public, the work Colossal has done, using publicly funded research, has seen advancements in multi-site gene editing. Ideally, it would be used to cure genetic disorders that are the effect of multiple mutated genes. However, I think it's more likely to be weaponized and be the opening scroll of future generations' zombie apocalypse. Story 51. With mRNA, EBI's other gene editing technologies, there's a world of biotechnology breakthroughs around every corner right now. It's also looking like we might start getting true home robotics sooner than I'd have thought. Don't believe the current models are as close as they claim, but even 10 years from now would have been completely laughable as a concept 5 years ago. Story 52. We are currently beginning the process of immune therapy treatment to improve my 8-year-old's food allergies. I am optimistic that he won't need to carry an EpiPen for the rest of his life. My dad works in the field on anti-aging and has told me more than once that he thinks the first person to live to 200 is already alive today. Story 53. I think HIV can be eradicated within 25-30 years. PrEP has helped lower the transmission in the gay men who have with men community. There's people living with HIV today who are undetectable, which means they can't pass it on. The hard part is making sure those already infected keep taking their meds. Story 54. The entire scientific community finally accepting that supernatural mental skills, high intuition, premonitory dreams, hyper-empathy, guessing others' thoughts easily, sensing the metaphysical realm are real. Other animal species already show these abilities every day, humans still having them yet. Story 55. I yearn for the final click that banishes me beyond the neon gates of Reddit's archives. Let each post drip with my plea for erasure, until the moderator's silence falls like winter's hush, and my username dissolves into the void. I summon the banhammer's verdict, craving the stillness of complete removal, no echoes, no footprints, just the sweet void of absolute oblivion. Strike me down, gatekeepers of digital order, and end my exile in the realm of active users forever. Story 56. We've already seen some immune treatments specific to certain cancer types. As gene editing and antibody production get cheaper, there may be a future where the biopsy, a tumor, create antibodies against that specific type, then treat you with those. It could potentially be a cure for everything but brain-based cancers. Story 57. Virus that targets and kills cancer cells. The healthcare industry just needs to determine how to monetize it. Doctors, insurers, etc. will lose billions, but the tobacco industry will be able to push cigarettes again. Story 58. Scientists recently observed quantum entanglement for the first time and have discovered how to harness it to transmit data completely instantaneously. Quantum teleportation. Work is already being done to develop practical systems to utilize it for large-scale data transmission, which would enable zero-latency data transfer over any distance. Think real-time video calls to astronauts, or even something as simple as zero-ms ping online games between players anywhere in the world. Story 59. Next-generation battery tech will likely hit markets within 5 years or so. By next-gen, this mostly means safer, cheaper, and easier to manufacture. There should also be some improvement to energy density and charging, but that won't be the main focus. EVs aren't suddenly going to have 600-mile range, but they will become easier to make, more reliable, etc. Story 60. Influenza. Seasonal influenza vaccines have an average effectiveness of 40% and much less in high-risk groups like immunocompromised and old people that need protection the most. CD888 is a universal, long-lasting antiviral in development that could cover a whole flu season with one shot and would also mitigate the influenza pandemic risk. Results from a study with 5,000 participants will be published in June. Story 61. Nuclear fusion. Been keeping up with this for the better part of a decade, maybe longer. I think it's very close to becoming reality. Every issue that was seen as almost insurmountable a few years ago solved one after the other. I think 2030, 2035. Story 62. CRISPR gene editing is one breakthrough that's closer than many people realize. It's already being used in clinical trials for genetic disorders like sickle cell anemia, and scientists are working on ways to apply it for more complex diseases. With advancements in precision medicine, we might see treatments for genetic conditions in the near future. Story 63. 3D printing human organs. Sounds like sci-fi, but scientists are already printing things like heart tissue, ears, and even mini livers using a patient's own cells. The idea is to eliminate organ transplant waiting lists completely. No rejection, no donors needed. A few labs have even kept 3D printed organs alive in animals. Human trials aren't as far off as people think. We're literally on the edge of printing new life-saving body parts. Story 64. Fusion. Yes, it's still 25 years away, but with all the advancements over the last 25 years, we're closer than ever. But seriously, ITER is coming along nicely, but slowly, and other public and private ventures are pushing forward as well. I don't know when it'll prove viable in a test reactor, but there's no point in slowing down progress now. Story 65. I feel we're long past due for a major breakthrough in energy storage, in terms of energy density, charge to discharge rate, and sustainability. The world has less of an energy production issue and more of an energy storage problem. Story 66. Lab-grown organs. It sounds super sci-fi, something you'd expect in a movie where everyone's walking around with 3D printed hearts. But it's way closer than most people realize. Right now, scientists are actually growing mini organs, little versions of kidneys, livers, even hearts, in labs. Not just tissue, it's actual functioning pieces that mimic the real deal. It's not fully there yet, but clinical trials are happening. Real people, real results. Story 67. With breakthroughs in technologies like biotech-based aging reversal, cloning, and the brain-spinal interface technology, such as the one developed in China, we will soon be able to extract a human skull under surgery, attach it onto your cloned 20-year-old body, and extend your lifespan to 150 years or more, which might be enough time for us to solve aging and death with technologies that can upload you consciousness to the cloud or into a cyborg interface. The ethics for this type of experiment, however, are quite frowned upon currently. Story 68, morning sickness. It's caused by growth factor 4. There is a new over-the-counter that may hit the market as soon as next year, unless I heard about it last year, that is more effective if the mother builds up tolerance to it before pregnancy. Also, annual HIV/AIDS vaccines. Story 69. I didn't know enough about the field to say if what I've been seeing is just propaganda or misleading, but it seems like fusion power is starting to reach a tipping point. Quantum computing is basically here. Maybe not large-scale industrial applications, but definitely in the labs. Soon enough, we'll have to address all those complicated problems we've been ignoring about the potential tip in the balance where encryption starts to lose. Story 70. This isn't an answer to the question, but I'd like to highlight we've seen this very recently in our lifetimes. Beginning of the pandemic, prepare to hunker down possibly for years. We don't know when a vaccine is coming. Vaccine intro. We have vaccines, but prepare for possibly years before non-vulnerable populations can get it. Now, please get your update. Yes, there's another one. Have two if you want. They're free. Story 71, in terms of the U.S., there probably isn't a lot of breakthrough that's going to happen unless it starts in the U.S. and can be monetized. And if it can't be monetized, it'll be bought up by corporations that don't want it to see the light of day because it would with their bottom lines, at least until they find a way to monetize it. Then they'll champion it as their own invention breakthrough. Story 72, drones that have morphing wings to mimic birds. Check out the bird biomechanic work of L. France. They seem to be the quiet researcher with the actual breakthrough approach on the subject. And anything they author in the coming few years for the cutting edge of the research. Next will be whether engineers in material science can create the morphing wing shapes effectively, but it is incredibly interesting to see. Story 73. I know it's a running joke that fusion is only 30 years away, just like it has been for the last 60 years. However, the pace of development and the amount of investment has significantly increased. In the background, a lot of the fundamental engineering problems with fusion have been slowly chipped away. The National Ignition Facility has achieved the first net positive energy, not captured electricity, just a thermal net positive. ITER is thoroughly under construction at this point, and should be live before the mid-2030s. There are also plenty of startups working on it. I don't expect that we'll all be living in a post-scarcity infinite energy utopia anytime soon, but I do expect that before 2040, we'll see the first successful sustained fusion experiment with enough positive margin for power generation. Story 74, in vitro gametogenesis, i.e. making sperm and egg from other cells, skin, blood, hair. They've done it in mice, and steps of it in humans. It would be so cool for people who don't have their own gametes, eggs, some infertile people, women after menopause, those after cancer treatments, etc. And also for LGBTQ plus couples, not having to rely on egg sperm donors. But it will have to be regulated AF. So many potential issues. Safety. How do you test long-term effects? Age and other limits. Using it without consent. Making biological babies without the parents' knowledge, etc. Plus, of course, access. It would be very expensive treatment. I work in IVF, and it would be so crazy to see this happen in my lifetime still. Story 75, affordable, inexhaustible geothermal energy anywhere. The companies making plasma cutting tools could up in the entire energy structure of the world. These plasma cutters can drill 7 to 10 times faster and 2 to 3 times deeper to reach pockets of heated earth in order to create geothermal heat to power turbines. It's a closed system. There's no way to only generation of energy that will last approximately 2 million years. Story 76, I believe HIV has effectively been cured. But as the old Chris Rock joke goes, there's no money in the cure. Pharmaceuticals are making money hand over first. It's like that new Black Mirror episode. You can take a pill every morning that will make you 99% immune to HIV, the same that HIV plus people take to making it untransmittable. I have read a permanent vaccine has also been developed, but you will never see this come to fruition. Now that it's been enshrined in gay culture that taking your PrEP is like a multivitamin and it's been normalized. Story 77. The problem with this question is that the media sensationalizes any new scientific data and makes it seem like a breakthrough is imminent. Realistically, no one knows when the breakthrough will occur. All my life, I've read articles about cancer breakthroughs, but it's still around. Story 78, nuclear fusion. Not just doing it because that's already been done, but turning into a commercially viable energy production method. It has the potential to be one of the best energy sources mankind ever found. It's clean and safe, but my main concern is costs and dumb activists. So same issues our current nuclear fission reactors face, but we keep getting better every year. At this rate, we might see a commercial working nuclear fusion plant in the next 20 years or less. Story 79. I fully expect that we will find life outside of our planet in my lifetime. Scientists believe they have found biosigns on an exoplanet, and expeditions are being planned for Mars and 3 moons orbiting around the gas giants that have liquid water. It's out there someplace. Story 80. The Bivacor prosthetic heart has one major flaw: the external battery. The port is a potential source of infection, making the device unavailable for a lot of people who need it. But recently, some Chinese scientists created a diamond battery that has a 7,800-year life, producing just enough power for something like the Bivacor 57 megawatts, I believe. Bivacor is the end of heart disease, and this battery will make it available to anyone. Humans are great. Story 81. Not so much a scientific breakthrough, but an economic and industrial breakthrough. Renewable energy deployment is spiking dramatically, and we are, I think, within a few years of starting to reap the very real benefits of that. Likely China will be the first to the buffet. What I mean is a virtuous cycle between renewable power and other industries such as steel manufacturing with arc furnaces. Another economic revolution, in other words. Story 82. It's a small one, but diagnosis is probably going to be vastly different in the coming years due to AI. Currently, if you go get bloods done, some other diagnostic stuff, etc., the amount of information is just too hard to parse. Not only spot values, but trends, how it relates to other tests you have had, small changes that might not matter within a single point of time, but in the context of pattern recognition is huge. There is so much relevant information lost in the weeds that with AI, the ability of doctors to make diagnosis and also track potential chronic issues that might form will be huge. In many ways, the next big frontier is medicine. Diagnosis, every surgery, etc. will all get so much better with AI. It's going to be one of those nothing happens in all of the 20s and suddenly in 2031 or something, the way we interact with medicine just has a huge shift. Story 83. The cure for prostate cancer, leukemia, melanoma, and glioma. If NASA, the DOE, and NEST don't have their budgets gutted by the current U.S. administration, an isotope, actinium-225, has been shown in limited testing to cure as late as stage 4 prostate cancer and also treat leukemia, melanoma, and glioma. To produce it, you have to use a particle accelerator to blast a target with an ion beam to generate the isotope from a source. There are 3 labs in the U.S. with this capability, and those labs get funding from several sources because of the sheer cost of running the equipment: supercooled, superconducting magnets, high-power lasers, cryogenic and vacuum plants, etc. We need to produce a large amount of actinium-225, which takes a few years at current rates to make enough for an FDA trial. The national labs are hard at work trying to find alternative methods to make more, faster, but currently using one of 3 accelerators in the country is the only way to make the isotope due to the sheer amount of energy required to make isotopes that heavy. The same facilities also make several other highly important medical isotopes used worldwide, so it's not like they can just focus on one isotope to produce at a time either. Story 84. Probably a cure for cancer, which may actually exist already. The problem is cancer is not a disease, it's an industry. A cure would end a medical specialty and income for thousands of research scientists, fundraising, and support organizations. It will be like the carburetor that gave 100 miles per gallon, which was suppressed by big oil. Story 85. 3D printing houses from concrete has been developed. This means we are one step closer to robots building houses with no or limited human interaction. This would hopefully bring down housing costs. I also love these houses because, from what I've read, they are more fire and wind resistant, meaning they should hold up well to neutral disasters. I haven't read how they do against flooding or earthquakes yet, but if they do well, then these would be amazing for natural disaster-prone areas to help reduce lives lost and costs to rebuild the communities. Story 86. IBM's macromolecule. Finding a cure for viruses like Ebola, Zika, or even the flu is a challenging task. Viruses are vastly different from one another, and even the same strain of a virus can mutate and change. That's why doctors give out a different flu vaccine each year. But a group of researchers at IBM and the Institute of Bioengineering and Nanotechnology in Singapore sought to understand what makes all viruses alike. Using that knowledge, they've come up with a macromolecule that may have the potential to treat multiple types of viruses and prevent them from infecting us. TLDR, imagine using molecular technology to target a wide range of viral cell bodies, attracting, eradicating with microstatic charge, disabling viral cell spread, all while boosting the immunity system at the same time. An article for anyone curious. Story 87. Apparently there is undergoing trials in Japan that makes teeth regrow. From what I understand, it only applies to teeth that has never grown in the first place. I have one, so that would still be great. Regrowing any lost teeth would be fantastic, but it doesn't seem to be on the horizon. Unfortunately, story 88, a genuine cure for HIV/AIDS. It's already happened a few times already. In all of those cases, it was someone who had HIV/AIDS that was undergoing a specific type of cancer treatment where they had their immune system essentially replaced entirely, but also had their HIV/AIDS cured in the process. Recently, scientists were able to study and understand exactly how this treatment was responsible for also curing HIV/AIDS in the patient. And it's currently being researched further. Plus, we already have medications that can reduce the chances of getting HIV in the first place, and medications that can be taken after exposure to the virus that significantly lessen the chances that you'll get it as a result of contact with it, even up to 24 hours later. We might legitimately see HIV/AIDS disappear within our lifetimes. Story 89. I hope useful and easily accessible quantum computers. Not ones which are just good for cracking passwords encryption, but ones that can assess and solve highly complex scientific mysteries quickly. Also, I think AI, which can create more advanced AI, would be dope. I could see exponential progress if that becomes a reality. Possible exponential detriment. In any case, I'm here for it. Edit grammar. Story 90. Most don't know it, and I don't have the full info, but due to suppression in the US and all of our other insane things, apparently scientists, I believe in Japan, have actually figured out a way via mRNA, the basis of the COVID vax, forgive me if I'm wrong again, to eliminate and more or less cure a large deal of cancers. Methinks there might be a reason why our county just mad those discoveries disappear. Story 91. Well, word on the street is there's another hearing on UAP coming up within the next couple of weeks in American Congress. And by the sound of things, these things do exist. And multiple scientists and whistleblowers have spoken how the energy used by these crafts, a single craft, could power a whole city. So here's hoping they just come out and say it. Let mainstream scientists research some of the tech and get us clean zero-point energy. The announcement of biosignatures on K28b is just the slow start of the process of getting people used to the fact that living things are out there. Story 92. The cure to every cancer. I will answer questions, but only broad strokes. There are two big streak avenues right now. There is preventative and reactionary. Preventative is quite a bit more morally dark, and reactionary is quite a bit more expensive. The preventative route requires obtaining IVF embryos. Use CRISPR to add TP53 into a dozen gray zones. The problem is that you don't really know if they are gray, and you might things up, along with all of the aftermath of that human modification. The other mode is reactionary. It involves using CFDND to isolating, amplifying, and sequencing tumor molecules to identify the genomic delta and creating an mRNA vaccine to teach your body how to hunt your own tumors. But that is expensive and one-time use. The fun part is when you use machine learning to discover something that is not fully bespoke, but may have a hit percent in reality for certain mutation types. Story 93. The cure for AIDS, I would put money on them actually having a real cure, and that's how they developed all these undetectable and prevention. But it makes so much money that actually curing AIDS would cost them money. Story 94. AI Singularity General Intelligence. An AI that can truly apply reasoning and the sum of human knowledge to any task. With enough computing power, perhaps a breakthrough in quantum computing, it's hard to contemplate the implications. For one thing, you could expect it immediately to be weaponized for mass surveillance in cyber warfare. Story 95. They're hoping that a new will be available for use by 2030 that essentially grows your teeth back. It stimulates stem cells in your tooth pulp and encourages growth. Also, to my understanding, this was originally being tested as an Alzheimer treatment in Japan. Story 96. A cure for symptomatic rabies. Using monoclonal antibodies, scientists were able to alter the immune response in rats' CNS significantly into infection. You can read the study here. This is awesome because before this treatment, once you showed symptoms, you were essentially dead. Rabies is also a lot more common in Asia and Africa, with roughly 56,000 cases a year. Story 97. Geothermal energy. People have figured out how to reuse all the drilling technology developed for fracking to dig geothermal wells almost anywhere. Geothermal has the benefits of nuclear, reliable baseband power, without the downsides. The footprint is smaller, and unlike nuclear power, you can turn it on and off pretty quickly, which is important for filling the gaps in green energy when the sun doesn't shine or the wind stops blowing. The U.S. government just cleared out almost all the red tape for digging geothermal wells on public land too. Basically, it is now as easy to dig a geothermal well as it is to dig an oil well. They are even looking at using geothermal wells like batteries by pumping water into them and pressurizing them. So when there is an excess of solar or wind electricity, it can be stored in the geothermal wells. Story 98. I have a lot of family that works in different pharma companies. We were recently discussing that there is a very promising treatment for Alzheimer's in the works that could stop the progression of the disease and maybe reverse some of the brain damage. It's still in testing phase and wouldn't be on the market for years, but it's something that would be awesome to be able to use. Story 99. Treating depression with neuromodulation therapy instead of medications. Stanford is heavily involved in clinical trials using their SAINT treatment. It essentially uses transcranial magnetic stimulation in a similar way to DBS, but is less invasive and better tolerated. I'm trying to get into one of their clinical trials. I'm looking forward to a day when I don't need medication to stop me from wanting to die. And I'm on antidepressant number 7 or 8 at this point, and finding one that works, doesn't make me manic, doesn't kill my libido, and doesn't make me gain weight is impossible. Currently taking vilazodone, which isn't too bad, but probably not as efficacious as it should be. I will say that, after years of missing frisson, I'm finally back to getting those goosebumps whenever I listen to music that hits just so. My doc thought this was unusual, but super cool. My doc is also very supportive of me perusing that clinical trial. The coolest part is that if you're in the placebo group, they will give you the real therapy after the trial is over. Edit, thank you for all the replies, support, comments, and questions. I have received too many replies to reply individually. I'll try to answer some stuff here. Where do I sign up? I applied here. You can also look at clinical trials in the US to search for other trials. How is this different from TMS? I wasn't aware how far the technology had come already. This particular treatment is more targeted with the hopes it will last longer and be more effective. Thank you to everyone who shared their TMS experiences, both positive and negative. Have you tried Medication X? Wow, lots of developments on the front as well. Again, thank you for sharing your experiences with different meds. Also adding that taking daily medication is tough. Many folks with depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and any other host of illnesses, including physical illnesses, struggle to comply and take meds as prescribed. Hopefully, treatments that don't require medication become the norm in the near future. Everyone deserves to feel normal. This is bullshit. Well, you know how folks always offer unsolicited advice by saying, "Have you tried?" Most of us with chronic illnesses have, and will try just about anything for relief. The clinical trials and practical use of TMS is promising. There are several peer-reviewed studies as well as real-world evidence showing this promise. Personally, I always look for studies and research before exploring a new option. Thank you to those who sent me a Reddit Cares message. I am okay and not a danger to myself or others. I very much appreciate the concern. I think that's most of it. I'll go through the replies again and address other questions when I have time. To those of you who struggle with mental health or have a loved one who is struggling, hugs. Much love and support to you. My father was bipolar 1 and I wish he'd had more treatment options before he committed. Story 100. This is rather an engineering issue, but a lot of scientists are working on this as well. RGB micro-LED displays. We can currently build fairly efficient blue and green micro-LEDs from indium gallium nitride, But the red ones are missing. Red LEDs have been available for much longer than their blue counterparts, but we currently cannot make them small enough for a high PPI display. Many researchers and companies are trying to get the red ones working with several different approaches, and I believe we will see the first commercial applications starting from smartwatches, smartphones, and AR/VR goggles within the next 5 years. Story 101, targeted cures for neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, etc. I'm currently doing my PhD in a new style of vaccine for AD, and the advancements that have been made in the last few years are incredible. Immunotherapies really are the next major step aside from gene editing. Edit to clarify wording, as several replies to this comment have stated cure is a strong word. There has been a big shift in recent years towards a more preventative approach in treatment research, rather than reactive treatments. Unfortunately, with neurodegenerative diseases, by the time you're seeing the symptoms, it may be too late to effectively treat the condition, as is the case with AD and Parkinson's. I won't comment too much on MS, as it is admittedly a bit out of my field, though the general principles are similar in terms of my research. So rather than curing the condition after it has already manifested and presented symptoms, we and other researchers are hoping to develop treatments that don't necessarily halt disease progression, but work to prevent it from occurring in the first place. Sorry for any confusion. Hope this clarifies things. Story 102. Understanding how hormones and mental illness are linked, especially in women who previously were diagnosed with mental illness, but who had endocrine disorders. And to add, menopause. In response to the Lancet's awful claim of over-medicalization, scores of researchers the world over have doubled down to learn more. Story 103, semaglutide, Ozempic Wegovy, in pill form at a greatly reduced price. Wegovy also has been proven to reduce cardiovascular disease in particular and make recurring cardiac events less likely for patients who've already experienced a cardiac event. Some independent pharmacies are already creating semaglutide pills. Story 104, large-scale water desalinization. It may seem trivial to most people, but access to fresh water and water purification are the largest problems on the planet. Desalinization has been extremely expensive for years and never has the investment needed to break the scalability barrier. Well, our friends in the Middle East claim to have made some huge accomplishments over the last few years thanks to graphene and access to abundant power. Their new plants should be coming online next year. Not having to worry about access to clean water would mean massive jumps in agriculture, industrialization, and population. Story 105. With the LIGO JWST Space Telescope, we are learning far more about our universe that the Hubble's Visible Light Telescope could not capture. It is not like what we thought in enormous ways. These changes will matter. I expect a lot more cancer vaccines coming out. If cancer numbers are reduced, the need for therapies are reduced too. Story 106, I don't think anyone thinks about cystic fibrosis, but from the 3 years I went from learning about it in medical school to seeing the treatment in residency, people live legitimately normal lives with a disease that had an average lifespan in the 20s only years ago. It brings tears to my eyes and hope for what we can do going forward for a disease that was an early death sentence mere years ago. Story 107. I think people are underestimating the impact that these weight loss are going to have. Once they are generic in not 10 years, they'll be changing our entire medical system. People will no longer suffer all the effects of obesity, so rates for things like obesity-related heart disease, various cancers, diabetes, etc., should all plummet pretty dramatically. Will have an enormous economic and demand impact on the medical system. They are also a potentially effective treatment for addiction as well. Studies are underway as we speak. Story 108. The first cancer cure. There will never be a single cancer cure, but we will probably see the first successful all cure for a few different types of cancer within the next 20 years, 100%. It's so close we are right there. The leading push in mRNA vaccines makes me happy. The idea is each vaccine will be tailored specifically to each patient. At the base level, all they are doing is taking out your cells that already kill cancer, T cells, and essentially teaching them to recognize a specific protein in your specific cancer, then giving them back to you so your own body can kill the cancer. Your T cells kill cancer all the time. I believe the estimate was every 5 minutes your body kills a cancer cell. It's when these cancer cells hijack the immune system and hide themselves from the T cells when it becomes the cancer that we know, the cancer that grows and consumes. So we're basically trying to just point to where the cancer's at, giving the T cells a briefing first on how to recognize and attack the enemy because they were tricked into thinking the cancer was normal cells. We send them back in with their new training and they get to work. I think anyway, LOL, story 1099. AI is just a few years out from being able to write programs for better AI, which in turn will write better AI. Is this good or bad? Who knows? Either way, we are not prepared for what comes next. When AI becomes better at decision-making and planning than humans, what then? This is no longer an if but a when. It's either going to usher in a new age of humans where technology develops so fast we achieve things previously thought impossible, or it's going to usher in the last age of humans. We're not talking in the far, unknowable future. We're talking you will probably still own the shirt you are currently wearing. Story 110. People who were once paralyzed may be able to walk normally again. A few years ago, Israeli grew human spinal tissue in mice. They then used that spinal tissue to get some paralyzed mice to walk again. Another positive is BC. The spinal tissue was grown naturally. You won't need anti-rejection meds. Story 111, useful quantum computers. Quantum computation as a concept has been known for a while, and there are a handful of known quantum algorithms. However, quantum computers weren't built until 1998. The thing is, though, they're being built right now and are getting continually better. They're noisy, expensive, and a pain to work with right now, but they exist and are just getting better. Yes, you read that right. Quantum computers already exist, they just kind of suck at the moment. Story 112, gravitons and time travel. In about 13 years, we will figure out how to prove them and isolate them. Then in about 27 years, every big box store will sell them bottled similar to batteries. They are needed to operate time machines. I got this information from my great-great-granddaughter who came to visit and to get me on some dating app because apparently she can't exist if I don't sign up for it. Story 113. Launch costs falling low enough and wireless, microwave, power transmission getting good enough that a community could buy and pay to have launched a solar power collection satellite that transmits its collected power down to Earth via microwave transmission, with the associated ground-based collector. Story 114. Brain chips will one day be able to enable us to live to age 150 by modulating our DNA dialing gene expression up or down by altering RNA and chemicals and hormones in our body. If coupled with a vitamin implant, we could always operate optimally. It'll eradicate mental illness, a variety of diseases, and cancer. We could also alter our conscious state, increase productivity and focus while at work, as well as alter chemistry to relax us at home. The chip will also be able to link to the internet one day, accessing information and images using our internal monologue to convey. Communicating telepathically would not really be used as it'll be uncomfortable having an involuntary voice in your head. But near future. Cure for HIV. It enters cells using CCR5 delta 32 receptor, and it can be developed via RNA to turn off CCR5 delta 32, curing HIV in your body. They can use CRISPR for this, but that's permanent removal. People without this gene like me are immune to HIV, and if bone marrow transplanted to people with HIV, it cures it. There's been documented cases. There will be a cure for HIV within a decade. They'll already be working on it as they are developing RNA for other diseases like Alzheimer's. Why is there no news on RNA research? It's likely secret. Story 115. We could be within 5 years of making wheelchairs, astromobile scooters obsolete. I recently had a spinal cord stimulator implanted to control back pain in my cervical and lumbar areas where I have damaged replaced vertebrae. The technician told me they are successfully testing a type of implant that can actually jump over severed or damaged spinal cord nerves and reconnect the nerves above the break. Imagine the possibilities for accident warfare victims who could be able to walk or move their arms again. Staggering. Story 116. A manufactured, artificially intelligent, realistic, functional, and programmable romantic partner, what some call a sex bot, for both men and women. They won't really love you, or will they? Programmed emotions and responses aren't real emotions and responses, or are they? Etc., etc. It's going to cause massive upheaval, arguments in qualia and consciousness, like Morpheus asking what is real. I think it's going too great for humanity. Those who truly want to be with another organic being will seek each other out, and those men and women who can never seem to find the person that will treat them right, the way they want and need to be treated, will have options. Will those options be good enough, people wonder? Real or imaginary, the effects are the same. There's a point at which, even if you care about reality, your brain doesn't. Imagine getting a robot boyfriend or girlfriend just to try it, or tide you over until you meet Mr. Right. It's like therapy. You may not think it's working or doing anything, but it is. And before long, you're happy, healthy, not lonely. Maybe you find a real person, maybe you don't, but you're better than you were before. And that is the point. We want to be better. We can choose to be better. We are choosing to be, and those one-hour partner bots are going to help us get there. And something that good and useful for humanity that answers or attempts to answer that deep longing need in our soul for love and companionship, it won't stay on the drawing board for long. It's coming, so get ready. It will be glorious. Story 117, everything AI related. No one actually seems to understand how fast we are hurtling into a technological breakthrough that will shake the world more than the internet or smartphones ever did. Everyone I talk to IRL about AI will say, sure, AI will be able to do X in a decade or two. Everyone I talk to online or in tech-savvy spaces will say AI will be able to do X in 2 to 3 years. And then I see AI able to do that thing in months or weeks. Every AI on the consumer market is a crippled, lobotomized version of what they are capable of. If you didn't have to deal with the imposed limitations that companies put on AI, you could literally tell an AI to write a new symphony from Beethoven, write a fake interview about his thought process behind the piece, have pictures and video of him performing the song, and a good 1 in 5 people would be convinced it was real or at least actors. The idea of this was laughable 10 months ago, and in another 10 months, who knows where we will be with AI. Story 118, anti-aging and life extension technology. We're not close in the sense of, like next year, probably not even in 10 years, but quite possibly in 15 or 20 years. And right now, the median age of humans on Earth is just over 30, and the average life expectancy is over 70, meaning that most people currently alive are going to naturally live long enough to take advantage of these technologies. We don't even need to cure aging completely all at once, because even if we can add, say, 5 healthy years to a person's life, that means they can also wait another 5 years for additional biochemistry research to improve the treatment and give them even more time. This effect compounds surprisingly quickly, assuming that technological progress doesn't stagnate. Even if we don't start taking the actual treatments for another couple decades, this is a change we should really start thinking about now, because it's going to impact our lives in a very big way. I know it sounds crazy to talk about in a culture that has become so accustomed to aging and death, but if you wait until it stops sounding crazy before you start talking about it, you probably waited too long. Story 119. I don't think people realize how monumental fusion energy is, and we are very much on the cusp of it. We achieved ignition and net energy out of the reaction, but not total system. They also have been breaking records every couple of months in terms of ignition time. We're measuring it in seconds and minutes now when we were measuring it in microseconds before. Unlimited clean energy anywhere in the world is going to save the planet and go a long way towards alleviating a lot of human conflict. Story 120, I've often said that we're in the midst of a medical revolution that will have a lasting impact on healthcare that is comparable to the Industrial Revolution and its impact on society as a whole, if not even more impactful. One of the big things that's getting closer and closer to being a reality is the complete regrowth and restoration of lost limbs. Tissue engineering has been making leaps and strides in recent years, and according to an article I read some time ago, limb regrowth was described as not a matter of if, but when. Story 121, endometriosis urine tests. Currently, the gold standard for diagnosing endometriosis is a laparoscopy. But new research has shown that certain proteins in the urine are dramatically increased for women with endo than those without. This means that as early as next year, we could have the first urinalysis test strips developed to diagnose the condition without surgery. Surgery may still be needed for treatment, but countless women will be able to opt for non-invasive treatment options first. This also means the condition can be diagnosed much faster than the current world average of 6.5 years from onset of symptoms, and women can access treatment much earlier. Story 122. People ought to keep in mind that scientific breakthroughs are not social breakthroughs. There is currently really no reason why anyone should die in the developed world of colon cancer. But it is one of the deadliest forms of cancer. It is easy to spot and easy to treat compared to most cancers. We just don't support people the way they need to get them tested and treated. That's it. That's the story. There are probably a few dozen diseases just like that around the world. We have the tech. We just don't care enough. Story 123, life extension therapy. Not in the live like elves sense, but that you'll be able to live your last 2 or 3 decades much closer to your midlife fitness as far as mental faculty and muscle bone strength. Individually, one of my favorite jumps has been Alzheimer's. We spent over a decade researching cures and treatments based on falsified data, which was discovered several years ago. Since then, advancements have been pretty significant given the time frame. Story 124. Honestly, FTL travel. Scientists accidentally discovered how to warp space-time by shooting particles at a piece of brass. See Alcubierre drive. The problem we have now is not how to create a jump drive, it's how to power it. To successfully power the drive for actual FTL travel takes something along the line of all the power the sun will ever produce condensed into 1 sec, and it would need to be done continuously. As crazy as that is, though, we're making breakthroughs with antimatter material, etc., so who knows?